Alrighty, so today we are sitting down to film another one-shot review. The movie that I saw today was Below, about the life story of one of the United States most prolific cocaine importers or smugglers by the name of George Young, and it was played by Johnny Depp, and his wife later on in the movie is played by Penelope Cruz. So, what's this movie about? Obviously, it's about the life story of this guy who became this crazy, prolific cocaine smuggler. But essentially, it starts out with, his first beginnings of being a poor-ish kid in Massachusetts, and then moving out to California and starting to deal marijuana. Then he goes down to Mexico to figure out how to get more marijuana, and similar to just about every drug story you've ever heard of, at some point in his life he gets upgraded to cocaine, and then that's when all the problems start and things get a little bit more ridiculous. But with this person in particular, this story is pretty interesting because there are multiple times in his life where either he had the opportunity to turn his things around, or he actually did, turn his life around in a very meaningful way, but either due to the fact that he always would try to be on the run, or his friends and people close to him would screw him over, and all sorts of other things. What would happen as a result would be eventually he pretty much gets caught by the police multiple times, and it results in what you would imagine would be pretty much a life sentence in jail. But regardless, I don't want to really spoil anything about the story, but I will talk a little bit about the themes that are happening in this movie. And for the most part, it's your typical story of somebody that grew up with not really enough money all the time. And his dad, they start off with this adage from his dad about how, sometimes you're flush with money, other times you're not. And that's just a part of life. And, you have to learn how to continue on and live a great life despite that. And originally he takes this lesson and it's just like, well, I never want to have to worry about that, so I want to make sure I can make a lot of money all the time. And he experiences a lifestyle he wants. At one point he's even like the main guy for Pablo Escobar, and he's transporting all these drugs and he's making all this money and he lives in this mansion and all that kind of stuff. But eventually he gets screwed over by his partners, and he has the opportunity to get out the game for good. And it just doesn't work out that way. You know what I mean? On top of that, once his child is born, he gets the opportunity to, basically he stops doing everything he's doing. And if it wasn't for this last ditch attempt to make enough money to be able to provide for his daughter while they live together in this new state, he gets caught by the FBI and the DEA and gets put away for the majority of his sentence. So, really, it's like not until that very last time did he ever learn the lesson that his dad was trying to teach him, which was just that, in life, money isn't everything, if not anything. And the experiences you have with others and your ability to live to your last moment is kind of the most important piece of life, and everything else is just a bonus, right? And so, first of all, I just want to say that's very based. And that's something I've been learning myself as time's been going on, just trying to recalibrate my brain to think that way. But it just feels like so many of these stories come out where you see people who illegally amass large amounts of money, and then at some point all they wish that they could have is their freedom and the ability to spend time with their family. So it's an important lesson to be learned, no matter how many of these movies you have to watch to learn it. But at the end of the day, I think it's a very good message. Now, this story specifically, I feel like was very interesting because of all the moments that he had to be able to basically get out of the game. There are multiple times where he is basically safe, not able to be got by the police. Either he's not wanted or he's wanted and they have no idea where he is. And as long as he doesn't, this is way back in the day. So as long as he doesn't drum up any activity, then he will be able to, without issue, kind of survive that circumstance and live on And his number one thing once his daughter's born is just to spend as much time with her as possible. But by the time she, I think, is like 5, 6 years old is when his wife does something to basically turn on him and send him back to jail because he couldn't make enough money like they were making before. And then similarly, also side note, apparently there are a bunch of people that stuck their money in different banks in Panama, and then at some point through whatever happened with world geopolitical situation, the country of Panama appropriated all of those funds and just like no more money for you anymore. So he had like $60 million in the bank that just went like that overnight, and nobody called him about it, right? So that's pretty crazy. But regardless, just throughout all these stories, there are multiple times where he learns the lesson that the most important thing for him to do is to spend time with his family and raise his daughter and be a good dad to her and stuff like that. But then his past keeps getting in the way and forcing him to go back to jail, which then severs the relationship between him and his daughter, even though his wife isn't necessarily like the best parent either, it seems. So, that's just like a very interesting dynamic in this movie. And I think what's also interesting is the way that kind of he builds into the person that he becomes. Because initially he's just dealing a lot of marijuana, but then it isn't until he goes to prison that he even gets the ambition to start doing cocaine, smuggling and stuff like that, just because his cellmate teaches him the differences between the two businesses and helps get him connected into the entire thing. But anyway, it's a movie about somebody's life story. It goes the way you would think it does. One of the kind of tearjerker aspects of this is that at the end of the movie, he is still in prison as a very old man, and he has not yet been able to connect with his daughter and learn what's going on in her life and kind of repair that relationship, when in truth that's the only thing he really cares about. And then on top of that, he's not able to see his dad before his dad dies, though he is able to leave him a recording, and his mom hates him even though his mom kind of sucks, and all that kind of stuff. So like the main lesson you learn from this is not only that money isn't everything, but also that almost like keep focused on what is the most important thing in your life, and it's most likely not your valuables or anything like that. It's normally going to be the people around you, even if they treat you poorly sometimes. If you care about them, they care about you, and these experiences that you live with them and being able to depend on them and them on you and all that, that's kind of like the main purpose of life, right? So with all that being said, I think this movie does sell that. I do kind of feel for his daughter because they make him out to be kind of like this saint in the second half of the movie where, even though he keeps sucking himself back into the business, or he keeps ending up in situations where he's going to get caught and jammed up in such a way, they make it seem like, if only, people wouldn't have just messed with him, then he would have been able to keep caring for his daughter. But I imagine that things didn't go that way or that idyllically in real life. So that's one thing that I feel like takes away from it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just doubt that that's really as positive as things were from his side. So with that being said, I actually thought it was a really good movie, and I think that Johnny Depp actually does a tremendous job of kind of playing this character throughout the way. Not to mention Ray Liotta plays his dad and also does a great job of almost playing that father figure to somebody like this. And another thing that's interesting is that throughout the entire thing, Ray Liotta as his dad never once sort of tries to throw him under the bus or is really mad at him or anything like that for choosing the life that he chose. Instead, he basically takes the path to parent him in such a way to say, hey, I know that if I were to tell you not to do this, it wouldn't even work anyway. So, I'm just happy that you're able to find something that gives you happiness in life or whatever, if this is really that. Now, he knows that's not necessarily what's really giving him happiness, and that it'll eventually kind of fall apart, but he's just trying to be a good dad and all that kind of stuff. And even then, on top of that, he kind of goes with the mindset of, well, you could have been good at anything that you put your mind to. It just so happens that you chose this path, which is unfortunate, I guess. And it's kind of interesting too, because if I'm his mom, I'm a little bit pissed because they basically paint her out to be a money hungry person, and then when he has all the money, she's like fawning over all of his stuff, and then when he gets in trouble for being a drug dealer, she's like, I want nothing to do with you, you embarrass me all over town. Just really, really interesting character dynamics there. But this is some guy's real life. So with that being said, the story plays out how you would imagine, and I think that while it is sort of an older movie, I think it is interesting, especially if you wanted another film to give you insight into how drugs are being trafficked into the U.S. or how they used to be trafficked into the U.S. But aside from that, I just thought it was a pretty good movie. I think if you're interested in watching a movie like this, the cast is great, and the story itself is pretty interesting, despite the fact that there's some clear favoritism from the writers as far as like treating him like he's actually not aware that he's doing all this stuff that's negative. But regardless, if I'm gonna plug this in, if you had the opportunity to see this in theaters, I don't, at this day and age, I don't really think it'd be the type of movie you'd want to go and see in theaters, so it would really matter to see. So feel free to watch it on Amazon Prime like I did, or get the Blu-ray or something like that, if there is one. Personally, I just have been looking on streaming recently, so normally I have the disc, but not today. What would I plug it out of 5? I think this movie gets a low 3 to a solid 3, just because there's really nothing special going on with this movie. There's nothing that makes me feel like it's some piece of art or something like that, but it is an interesting real life story about one of the most prolific men to traffic cocaine into the U.S. And his story is atypical because the way that he gets into the game is almost like if one of your people that in your life that happens to deal like small-time marijuana or something like that were to all of a sudden become this guy who is at the top of the food chain, speaking with Pablo Escobar on a regular basis type of thing. Very interesting story nonetheless. So, light 3 to a solid 3, not sure where it falls in between that. I'm not really sure how I feel about these dramatic retelling documentary style type things, how they really fit into the system. Just because, like, even with Serpico, the way it is like, even if it was like the best movie ever, it's really within a genre that kind of holds it back from being anything that ticks up into the 4 and 5. But we'll see. Maybe I'll feel differently about that with a different movie in the future, but that's how I feel today. So anyway, that's the movie. That's the movie Blow, about George Young, starring freaking Johnny Depp and Ray Liotta and Penelope Cruz. That's the movie. I will catch you guys on the next review.